the town red. How often have we heard that line? Whether it has been uttered by exuberant party-goers on New Year's Eve, or cold, sober Bolsheviks who thought that they were at the dawn of a new age. Now, I suppose it might be possible for a determined Bolshevik to paint a town red, but certainly nothing large, or especially nothing as large or as foolish as the new imperialist dreams of the Communist International, or for that matter, the old imperialist dreams of my country. But yes, I can see painting a town red, at least metaphorically speaking. By that I mean I can see establishing something on the order of socialism in a modern city, especially a modern city that has already been dulled and crushed by capitalism and industrialization. It may even be a good idea, especially since smoke and soot have already painted so many towns black, to paint it red. In any case, such a paint job would not be an exercise in creative revolution, but rather an exercise in ugly uniformity. After all, a truly free people would likely be engaged in painting their own piece of the town a color of their own choosing, so that the town would not be entirely red, but every color of the rainbow. Now, I should like it understood that my use of the metaphor of painting things red is not merely meant to be an attack on the wrong sort of revolutionary, or even the wrong sort of progressive. It is also meant to be an attack on the wrong sort of conservative. You see, if I think that progressives can be in error, I also think that conservatives can be in error. As a matter of fact, the conservative often makes exactly the same error that the progressive makes. Does this surprise you? Let me explain. That error, you see, is this. Each of them permits truth to be determined by time. That is to say, each judges a thing on the basis of yesterday, or on the basis of today or tomorrow, and not on the basis of eternity. What I am suggesting to you here is that each makes his decisions on the basis of a calendar, each the conservative and the progressive, and not on the basis of a creed. Now, it's obvious that those who call themselves progressives do this as well. But yes, so do many conservatives. The root of the problem for those who call themselves conservatives, very simply, is this. Too many of them attach too much importance to their own birthday, instead of looking at today from the vantage point of the birth of Christ, or, if you prefer, from the birth of Mary Baker Eddy. The conservative looks at the world from the very limited vantage point of his own birth. Instead of considering an historical process and testing its merits by a principle, he merely considers how far that process has gone, and then decides whether or not it should go any further. I know that it is thought that conservatives love the past, but this type of conservative doesn't really love the past at all, does he? Rather, what he loves is the present, which is to say, he loves his own present. But loving the present is at best an impossible illusion, and at worst a dangerous precedent. Why? It is an illusion because the present, such as it is only momentary. It is perpetually about the business of destroying itself, of disappearing. And it is dangerous because loving the present can result in leaving in place some very bad things. Think of it this way. The fruit of this successful revolution, or that progressive initiative, might actually be something abominable. But that abominable thing somehow becomes an admirable thing simply by surviving. And more often than not, it survives less because people like it, and people think it a good thing and a useful thing, than because they simply have grown accustomed to it, or probably because they are resigned to it. What I am suggesting is that more often than not, a conservative merely turns out to be a man who conserves reforms and even revolutions, whether that be the revolution that is industrial capitalism or the revolution that is Bolshevism, or the reforms of its statist cousin, socialism, or its more distant cousin, progressivism. Now, when it comes to all of this, the Bolsheviks have one great advantage, as do the socialists and the capitalists. And what is that advantage, you ask? It is simply this. They know what they want. It must be conceded that it is very difficult to defeat, or even resist anyone who truly knows what he wants. There certainly are no easy answers here, but I can say this much. Successful resistance against those who know what they want can best be carried out by those who know that they want something else. Where does all this leave the progressive, you ask? Does the progressive know what he wants? I suppose, in a sense, he does. He wants progress, whatever that means. Am I a progressive? I certainly hope not. Am I a conservative? Again, I hope not. At least not the sort of conservative I have just described. So then, what am I? I am a reactionary. By that I mean that I react against a great many things in the past, as well as a great many things that exist right now. And on what basis do I react? I test the worth of anything, not by a calendar, mind you. After all, a calendar only tells me when something happened. But rather I test them by a creed, which tells me whether they should have happened at all. Now it also happens that some of the things that I deem to be good have already happened, and therefore I would fight to remember them. I would fight to preserve them. I would fight to build upon them. I am thinking, of course, of Christ and his church, and other things that I desire have not yet happened. And I think ought to happen, such as a fair distribution of property. Therefore, I would fight to obtain them. Let me bring all of this back to the matter of painting things. Whether that means painting a town red or one's own home green or whatever. I think the true test for deciding whether or not to pick up a paintbrush ought to be whether or not one likes red or green, and not whether one happens to like the day before yesterday or the middle of next week.